Hi, I'm Greg Cutter at Old Dominion University, known to some of my colleagues as Dr. Go FLO. This video is to show you how to disassemble and assemble in preparation for cleaning the General Oceanics GO FLO bottle used for the Geotraces program. What I have here is one of the US Geotraces 12-liter GO FLOs, and I'm going to first let's go over some of the parts and the nomenclature on it, and then we'll take it apart and I'll show you how to disassemble it for thorough cleaning and then obviously reassemble it. In the process you'll then know how to fix it. First, the GO FLO. This is one of our cleaned GO FLOs that just came back from the US Pacific transect, and the things to note, it's generally a standard GO FLO, but the air bleed valve, the air valve, is replaced with a swage lock fitting here with Teflon cap. Then at the bottom, the normal drain tube is replaced with a Teflon plug valve, in this case for 3/8 inch Teflon tubing fitting. Now the other thing that I think is very important on this is that the conventional lanyard arrangement that's sold to you by General Oceanics here has these fittings, these balls, which have copper nitropress sleeves in them, so they're potential contamination here, also here, and here. And so what we have done, because this is the pressure relief valve in the old kind of GO FLO usage, would at 12 meters would push in and then allow the bottle to open. It would send down closed and then open. We no longer use that. We send the bottles down open and then close them. So really, not only is this pressure relief valve superfluous, so are these balls with their attendant potentially contaminating copper nitropress. So we remove those, and what we do is simply cut this off and replace it with Vectran line and simple knots. So we just have the Vectran line here and down, and it follows the same path. And then to make the loop at the end, you simply just tie a knotted loop, and it's very simple. We also replace the lanyard that's here for the pressure relief valve with a cable tie, plastic cable tie. And of course this one has the lanyards fit to go onto our carousel. Okay, let's start by disassembling our GO FLO. So what we have to do is remove this top ring, which they call the ball entrapment on the instruction manual or the diagram that's shown on the side of each GO FLO. And we have to remove this nylon lanyard that holds it in. So I usually just use a screwdriver. Sometimes you can grab it with your fingers and get it out. But we just take it out on each side. That's done. I put my fingers in here and lift the ball entrapment out. Then it's time to remove the ball. And the ball simply sits on what you'll see is the floating seal, and it has this knuckle to connect it to the pulley on the outside. So you just kind of grab it and pull it out, and the reason why I'm tilting it a little bit is so that that other piece doesn't drop. I usually put this on a clean, obviously clean chem wipe. Here's the piece that makes the connection. And now you can see inside this GO FLO. This is then what's called floating seal, so we simply take that out. And there's the silicone seal, and this is what we need to clean. What we have to do essentially is take this O-ring out, take this seal out, and when the GO FLOs are new, there is bits of dirt and machine oil inside the GO FLO, and this all has to be cleaned out. So when you have a new GO FLO, you need to remove everything essentially and clean it out very carefully and mechanically, and then reassemble it, then do the cleaning procedure that's described in the Cutter and Bruland paper 2013. Okay, now we're taking a close-up of the floating seal. So if you recall, we had the floating seal is sitting on top of this silicone seal, and what we need to do is, with a new Go Flow in particular, but sometimes with an old one if you're having contamination problems, you have to remove this O-ring. The best tool to remove this O-ring is an actual O-ring removal tool, and I highly encourage you to get one. Unfortunately, I couldn't find mine, so I'm using a little spike here. But you essentially just go in, and the O-ring tool, which is a U shape, makes this much easier. But we then remove it. Okay. Now, right now, I have to say that it's critical for doing trace metal sampling that all of these O-rings in the Go Flow be made of Viton, V-I-T-O-N, Viton rubber. Conventionally, or when they're shipped, usually General Oceanics sells them with Buna rubber, which is highly contaminated, especially for zinc. So all these have to be replaced. Now, in fact, this is a bottle that's been cleaned previously, but what we have to do is clean out this O-ring groove, and to do that we simply use chem wipe and isopropyl alcohol, or 2-propanol. That one. Okay, so as I said, we just clean this out with isopropyl alcohol. That does a good job of removing most of the debris and if there's any machine oil. So I simply just clean it out with a chem wipe. Very simple. And of course look to see if there's much debris. As I said, this one's already been previously cleaned. When you have new Viton O-rings, you want to wipe them down. I again use the isopropyl alcohol. And there was a little bit of debris on this one. Anyway, so we just clean this, both of them, nothing very fancy, but just to get any machining debris out of the groove and off the O-ring. Of course, we'd start with new O-rings. I wouldn't put this back in. And then it just simply goes right back in. That's easy. Okay, now we have to remove the silicone seal. This is the trickiest one to do. Well, removing it, if you don't mind destroying the O-rings, no problem. Wait until you see how I have to get it back in. We can use the isopropyl alcohol, by the way, as a lubricant here. Sometimes it makes things a little better. So I just put a little isopropyl in there, and then I'm going to, if I had an O-ring tool, it would be really easy. I don't. So I'm just going to slip my screwdriver in here and pop the O-ring out. There we go. You need to have extra O-rings. Okay, there we go. So now it's ready to come out. And just grab it and pull it out. I'm going to show you something very interesting about this O-ring when we put it back together. So there's another Viton O-ring, and now the silicone seal simply pops out. And the one thing I want you to show about this silicone seal, which really doesn't seal so much as it provides the pressure to push the floating seal up against the ball, is that it is not symmetrical. It has this round edge and then rather flat on this side. The round edge is what goes into the O-ring groove. So if you can see closely on this O-ring groove, you'll see that it is not symmetrical, unlike it's different than the floating seal. So this has a kind of an asymmetric shape to it. So again, here's another O-ring groove that we need to clean out with the isopropyl and a clean wipe. This one frequently has lots of machining debris, not only pieces of plastic but potentially metal in them. So we want to thoroughly clean this out. A little bit of debris. And now you proceed with, so we disassembled, took the O-ring out of the floating seal, floating ring or seal. We took the silicone disc out along with its O-ring. There is one more O-ring on the bottle, and it's only if your bottles have the pressure release valve, or I'm sorry, switch, and it's right inside. I don't know if you can see it, but I'm going to put the flashlight, and then what I'm doing is my thumb is now pushing the pressure relief valve in, and now you should be able to see the black O-ring. That one's not a lot of fun to get off. It's kind of hard to get off, but you have to get in there. You have to have one of your friends push the valve in, and then you have to get in there with hopefully small hands and arms and get that one out. If you have to, you can disassemble that valve. It's not easy, but if you can see, there is, and I'll see if I can rotate it, there is a peg, a PVC peg that can be pushed out. You can reach in there with your hand, push it out, and then on the outside of the bottle you remove this bar simply by pulling it out, and then the whole valve will come out, and you could then easily remove that O-ring and clean that groove. Okay, as we did before with the other Viton O-ring on the floating seal, of course we want to clean this silicone seal, and again I use the isopropyl alcohol again, so we just simply get it soaked up and give it a good wipe down. It should be relatively clean, especially if it's new, but we clean both sides of it very thoroughly. We're going to be cleaning the whole bottle once it's reassembled, so this is really just kind of cleaning up the bits of mess from us handling it and or the manufacturer. And then similarly we give the O-ring a wipe down, the, remember, Viton O-ring. Before we reinstall it. Okay, we've disassembled our GO FLO. We've taken all the O-rings out, we've cleaned the grooves, and I would also suggest at this point you might as well go ahead and squirt down or wash down the inside of the trunk or the tube of the GO FLO with the isopropyl alcohol. Now we have to reinstall the O-rings, and the one that's the trickiest is this silicone seal O-ring, and I'll show you why in a second. So first we need to put the silicone seal back in. Okay, and it sits in there nicely. Now to keep it in place though, we have to get this other Viton O-ring in here. And here's the trick. The problem is that to keep this tight enough, they in fact use an O-ring that's larger than the diameter. So I can show you right now. I'm just going to push it down, and you'll see that there's extra O-ring, quite a bit extra. And so it's not simply taking here and pushing this O-ring in, but in fact we have to, and I think you can see all the extra right here. There's a couple of centimeters extra O-ring on a 12-liter bottle, and we have to get that in there. So rather than simply pushing it in, what we will do is make kind of a wave pattern with the O-ring and put a little bit extra with each section that we push the O-ring in, and that will then make it work. Because this is now a bottle that we're going to clean, this is not we'll pretend this is a new bottle or a bottle that's going to be re-cleaned. I'm going ahead and using metal tools. The only thing that I've done here is that this, you need a large size to push this O-ring in so you don't cut it. In addition, if you are using a metal screwdriver such as I am, I've taken a file and rounded all of the edges on this. So all of these edges have been rounded, and then I take the tool itself and I clean it with isopropyl alcohol. If there's any corrosion, I might actually use some weak hydrochloric acid to clean it, and then quickly wash it off and again clean it with isopropyl. So we'll use this to push it in. If this was a Go FLO that I'm actively using, or I have been using, it's already been cleaned, and we need to reinstall this, I recommend that you make a pushing tool that this is made out of a strong acrylic, about a millimeter thick, with again rounded edges. Okay, so let's see my technique for now putting this O-ring in. Okay, let's start. I will tell you right now, this is very tedious. Sometimes it works better if you lubricate the O-ring a little bit, and to lubricate it I usually just use a very small amount of the isopropyl alcohol. And what you have to do, remember, what we're going to do is kind of make a wave pattern to this. We're going to put a little bit extra in with each section that we do. So we're going to do a section at a time. So what I put this in here, and then I use my fingers to start it, and then use my pushing tool to push the O-ring into the groove. So there it is, started. Now, let me say one thing about this groove. The groove, you actually push down against the silicone seal. You don't push out, because in fact the groove for the O-ring is that way. It's actually this way. So you don't really get very far pushing this way. You have to push at, let's say, approximately 45-degree angle. So I started that. So I'm just going to do a little bit here and get my thing started. There we go. Now I have to start adding a loop, or add the wave, if you will, a little bit. So what I'll do is I'll do the next section, and I will add just a little more than should go in there of O-ring. So now we have, do you see the little bit? I might have put too much in there. Let's see if we can get that in or not. But essentially with each section, you have to put a little bit extra. And so now what I do is I pushed it on both sides. Now I'm going to insert this into the groove. It's almost like I've done this before. And now we just simply continue around the circumference of the O-ring. So again, we've pushed some in, we add a little bit of extra, and then push that in. So I will start on this side first, make sure that's in the groove. Now I work and push this in. So that when we get to the end, there won't be any extra. Again, note the direction I'm pushing. It's about a 45-degree angle. I'm not pushing perpendicular to the wall, I'm pushing down in. Okay, we've gotten down to the last section, and if we have done this right, if we've put enough little loops in there, then this should just be pushed straight in. There shouldn't be any extra. So we simply just finish it up by pushing the last bit in. There we go. Now, I suggest at the end that you look and make sure that in fact it is all pushed in correctly and about the same distance. So if you see a part that's sticking out or something, you may want to help push it in a little bit and just go around the whole edge and take a good look at it. So I just take a final inspection. Remember, this has taken you quite a bit of time and effort to put this in, so don't skimp right now. And if you do see a section coming out, make sure you push it in really well, because it could come back to haunt you later. If you start to get a leak, then it may be because what part of this O-ring has actually come out, and then the floating seal does not seal properly up against this silicone. So the last thing I do when I'm all done is, especially since in this case I use the metal screwdriver, is I'll just give it another wipe down before reassembling. And we're ready to go. Okay, let's finish up the job then. So we've reinstalled the silicone seal, and we've mechanically cleaned the inside of the bottle. So the floating seal goes back in. I then take the dog bone and put it in first, and I'm reassembling everything in the same order and the same. This was the downside when we took it apart, so I'm putting this as the downside again, and there was the side that's up against the floating seal, and putting it, you see, put it in an angle. There we go. We now put the ball keeper, the ring, in here, and then simply put the nylon in to push about half on one side and half on the other side. The bottle is now ready for its cleaning. The cleaning procedure again is described, the soaking procedure, if you will, is described in the Cutter and Berlin 2012 paper. That's in Limnology and Oceanography Methods special issue. It's essentially just a detergent wash, a solvent, isopropyl wash, and then a hydrochloric acid soak. Weak hydrochloric acid. And let me say this about the hydrochloric acid. It's very important that no hydrochloric acid come in contact, in particular with this sealing lanyard here, because it will get brittle, crack, and break, and you'll be really sorry for that one. Very difficult to get out. And of course it's not good to get, for example, this Vectran cable to have hydrochloric acid in contact with that. So when you do the hydrochloric acid, if you happen to spill any in that soak, and in fact when you're done, rinse the bottle off really well with deionized water. Get rid of all the hydrochloric acid. The rest of it, again, the cleaning procedures are described in the Cutter and Berlin paper. So there you go. You're able to take it apart and reassemble it, hopefully.